So see, magic is not what they say that it is, pulling a rabbit out of a hat. I mean, again, we talked about that being a fun, silly magic. That's the one they want your attention focused on, or on voodoo and stuff like that. They don't want your attention focused on the magic that they do every day. Don't use your imagination, use your imagine heaven. Welcome to the show that exposes the deceptive narrative of government and religion, bringing a new light of truth to the masses, and sure to make your congressman cringe. Hi folks, welcome to the show. We've got a great show for you today. Today's show, Financial Magic, the Roman and Egyptian religion of Mammon, the secrets of slavery. So, let's just get right into it. A financial system equals slavery. Now, some people might not want to hear that. If you're ambitious and you're full of zeal, trying to, you've got the dream, you've got the vision, get your hands on as much money as possible. And so you don't think of it as slavery. You think of it as there's a prize at the end of your years of hard work, or for your inventiveness, or your new ideas, or something like that. Nothing new under the sun. And a financial system is slavery. If you have to pay in order to not suffer, if you have to pay so that you don't suffer, in other words, so that you don't go hungry, you have to pay for food. So that you don't go homeless, you have to pay for a house. So that you don't go naked, you have to pay for clothes. So that you have some experiences of entertainment and just fun. Because fun is a want, or it's not just a want, and it's not just a luxury. Fun is also a need. If your life is no fun, you won't want to live it very long. But they limit how much fun you have because it keeps you motivated to keep working so you can pay for more fun. And so if you have to pay not to suffer, that's coerced work. And coerced work is slavery. If you have to pay for your life, if you have to pay for the experience of living, that's being a slave. They just tricked everybody, what slavery was. They said, oh, slaves were forced to work, and they were forced to work in the fields and, pick cotton and all, pick all these other things. And they didn't have money, or they were given a small monthly allowance, but they didn't have any money left over and stuff like that. That's the experience of life for most people. They get a small amount of money each month, and at the end of the month, after they've paid all their bills, they have nothing left. They're paying to stay alive. They're paying for the experience of living, although to most folks, or to many folks, it doesn't feel much of a living. And as far as picking cotton and working in the fields, well, what field of employment do you work in? All they did was change the name of slave and owner to employee and owner. That's not the relationship that most employers and their employees have. They're not thinking about it that way. But that was the design of the system. And when you get into those folks in the upper echelons of government and in the corporate world, and those folks that control them, they know exactly what they did. They know why they have the name employee. It was just to change it from slavery. Think about it. When you borrow money, that's the exact same, and then you have to go to work for somebody to pay it off. That's the same thing as what you heard about in biblical times called bond servants. It's just debt slavery. And that's what they're trying to have the whole world. That's why they have the United States in debt, so that you will be working to pay off the debt because you're working to pay off somebody else's debt. Just like the peasants did, if the master of the land or the lord of the land sold one of their peasants off because they had a debt to the king or to the pharaoh or whatever, the slave would say, I'm paying off my debt, but it wasn't his debt, it was his master's debt, right? And so this idea of paying not to suffer, if you just make more money, if you can just get, you can get ahead of the bills and do all that's all an illusion, right? They always keep control of that. An illusion is what? Is magic. And this type, and that type of magic is the evil magic. So if I take this coin here and I go like that, what I've done is I've misdirected your attention to this hand. Instead, it never left this hand, right? It was always there. And so the magic that they're misdirecting your attention, and the magic's always been right in front of you. For instance, the English language. Okay, so a lot of times in magic you'll hear the word spells. Well, that's what language is. It's a bunch of spells. Now they could have created a language where you just had like one symbol for each word in the language. That way there's not a bunch of letters to make up a word. There's just one symbol. But you make a bunch of letters use a bunch of letters to make up a word if you want to program people subconsciously. Now they call it neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And it's a way to get into somebody's subconscious mind without them knowing it. And it gives you thoughts that you think are your own that aren't. So the English language, the interesting thing about the English language, they say nobody really knows where it came from. They have different theories and ideas, but nobody can say this was the day that somebody sat down and used Latin or Roman letters or any of that and changed a form of language into English. Nobody can say when that happened, who did it, or anything. Now, I can give you an idea, though. The Phoenicians, the Jewish priest, and the Romans, along with that capital G that you see in Masonry, that really stands or is a symbol of a government god. So you think about the process of sitting down and creating a language. You have to decide what the word is, how it's pronounced, and in what ways that it's used. You have to do that. It's an extremely in-depth, very complex process. And the reason that you go through such a complex process to create a language of spells is because you're using it for subterfuge or for subconscious manipulation of people. So the only really way to fix that would be to have every word have its own symbol, and no two words sound the same. That would be maybe the only way to do it, and perhaps it would be best to even have no written language. Maybe that's part of the manipulation is they say, cure illiteracy and let's make sure that nobody is illiterate, teach everybody to read and stuff like that, because they want you to learn and to take in all those spells. And so if they teach you that you have to be kind of dumb to not read, then that gives everybody a motivation to, you know, um, fall into that deception or that deceptiveness, manipulation, brain control, mind control, thought control, however you want to say it. It gives people motivation. Well, I don't want to look dumb, so I make sure I got to learn how to read and all that kind of stuff. Okay, the word money. Now, somebody had to change that. You know, in one language, money is called another one thing and another thing, and like in Spanish, it's dinero, like Robert De Niro. You know, so somebody had to decide, what are we going to call dinero in English? And so they came up with the word money. Now, if you look at money here in a country where English is the official language of the country, there's a pyramid on there with one eye. So here's the word money, and it has one in the middle of it. And if you add the E, then you see one eye. It's a one-eye money. That's the Cyclops god of Mammon. Or if you take the word Mormon, okay? Mormon is, now they say, very likely the most wealthy religious corporation in the world. It's a business corporation. It's a corporate religion. And the most wealthy. And Mormons, and let me first say this. Most members of the Mormon church that you meet are good, kind, loving people that want to do good things, that want to do good for God, or Heavenly Father. They're wanting just to be good people and doing their best. But there is a focus and a image to being a Mormon, and they're kind of known often for, you know, being a wealthy group of people. Well, so let's look at the word Mormon. Mormon. Now add that I again to the end of it. Now you have more mon e with one I. And so, you know, and you'll hear this said a lot or often. It will be said in Mormon churches or the LDS church, let your eye be single, right? The wealthiest, richest religion in the world that hoards up billions of dollars and hides money in shell corporations. Now, you don't blame the Mormon congregation or the people for that. Most of them are just, like I said, just folks just trying to be good. It's the corporation and the corporate leaders that are deceiving the people, and they've got their congregation of folks who don't mind being in the dark. Most of them don't mind that the church had billions of dollars and that they didn't know about it until they were fined by the SEC, right? And so most of them didn't know. And then all of a sudden, Mormon charitable giving from the Mormon corporate church headquarters, after that story broke, all of a sudden the next year their charitable giving like quadrupled or 10 times the amount that they would normally do in years and years and years. In fact, they say in that next year they gave more money in that one year than they have in all the entire history of the Mormon church. Now, I think what they claim they gave wasn't really what they gave. I think they counted all of the hours. So there's about 17 to 20,000 missionaries, full-time missionaries that work for the Mormon church to find new members. I think they counted every hour that they wanted to, you know, whether it was 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day or 24 hours a day, because they are 24 hours a day on their mission. and it's a very structured control environment when they're on their mission. So they're completely at the whim of the the corporate leadership of the church. So the corporate leader of the church could technically and legally count every hour of every one of those, and then they could assign a value to each of those hours. Now that could be $15, $20, $25, but if you take, whatever amount that is and multiply it by however many hours in a day they chose to multiply it by, and then multiply that by how many missionaries they have, 17 to 20,000, you're talking about massive numbers. They can also count every hour that members of the church, if they go out to do a community project and help a local food bank or something, they can count every hour of that. The giving machines that aren't actually giving machines, they're taking machines, because they put these machines out and they say they're giving machines, but they're not, because the church is giving to people. It's because the church is saying, look, here's some machines and you can give some money to it. They're giving machines. You give your money to the machine, right? When I first heard of it, I thought, oh, they must have like little care packages and stuff that you can just go up and it's like a free vending machine. Maybe they've got, one thing that has, little gift cards to the grocery store, and another one might have a toiletry set in it, and, spits out, like those little packages for travel for a toothbrush, and it has a little tiny. I thought it would have that kind of stuff, and then I find out, no, it's not giving, it's receiving, it's taking. They're taking. It's a money giving machine. You give your money to the machine, and then they divvy it out. But that could go through the corporation of the Mormon Church, and then then they give it to whatever charity you picked on the machine, but it gets counted for them. Now, is that exactly what's happening? I don't know, but I know those machines aren't giving. They're taking. They take money from you. They're not giving you something. You might say they're giving you a good feeling, but I think there should be a lot of research done into that. But that's probably all been because a lot of people talked about it after those machines came out, and people started wondering. I wonder if they're counting every dollar they take in those machines and giving it out to charities. I wonder if they're counting it as they give it out. Like when you go to a store and they say, would you like to round up for charity? You give them the money for charity, and then they give it to the charity, writing a check from their corporation, and they're the ones who get the tax deduction for it. So I was wondering, is that what they're doing? But anyways, so that's the word money in Mormon. So see, we've got magic spells there. Now, let's take another word. Electric, right? Just about everybody uses it. It's a great thing, makes life easier. You have to be careful with it, but it's certainly been something that has done good things for mankind, but it's also been used for some bad things. Well, electric is also a trick. Elect, trick. Now, there's nothing wrong with electricity if you're careful with it and that sort of thing, but it is something that they use, like the apple or the fig, in the Garden of Eden, that eat the forbidden fruit, that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with an apple or a fig. It's just the representation that they use. It's a way for them to tell you what's going on without them telling you what's going on. Elect, trick. They're telling you that they have a trick to get power, right? And it's for you to elect people to rule over you. So electric has two forms. There's AC electric and DC. Elect, trick. Well, where do you elect people at? DC, right? Washington, DC. That's where you elect people. This is how you deceive the elect, the people that the electorate. the people that ate from the government's tree of three branches, the tree of death, the one that they talked about in the Garden of Eden. So that kind of power is used in batteries and stuff like that. Well, think about battery, and then think about AC. AC is the kind that comes on the poles that look like a crucifix. Don't touch the tree in the middle, you will surely die. In other words, don't eat from that tree, you will surely die. And that tree in the middle was actually the three crosses on with Jesus and the two folks that were crucified with him in the biblical narrative. So you have AC and DC, assault and battery, right? That's what they did to, in the biblical narrative, they did to Christ, assault and battery. So, and that's why our national pastime is baseball, because it has a bat in it, right? Battery and bats in nighttime for a nation led into the darkness of night. You know, bats and owls and stars and all that stuff. So AC stands for alternating current, and DC, it stands for direct current. Well, what do they do with the president every few years? They alternate. They go back and forth. Sometimes it's 4 years, sometimes it's 8 years, but they go back and forth between Republican and Democrat. So they're alternating where the power is, which is the exact way that electricity works. So they alternate between Republican and Democrat in DC. Okay, so that's a form of trick, electric, another magic spell. So see, magic is not what they say that it is, pulling a rabbit out of a hat. I mean, that's, again, we talked about that being a fun, silly magic. That's the one they want your attention focused on, or on voodoo and stuff like that. They don't want your attention focused on the magic that they do every day. Think of the word soldiers. Sol, die, are. Okay, so sol is another word for sun, and sun is another word that sounds like another word, sun. So sol, die, are. Soul sounds like a soul, like your spirit, your soul, right? So sol, die, are, right? Well, what happens to a soldier in war? They die. Sun, die, are, right? That's the light of the world, right? And then sun, like a child's son, die. Our son dies. Our son dies. So soldier is a magic spell saying, look, this is what happens when you go to the war. You're killing the light of the world, killing the light of each other. Who killed Christ? The Roman soldiers. In the biblical narrative, it was the Romans and the Roman soldiers that killed the Savior, that crucified the Savior. Who kills the light in each other? Soldiers when they're fighting one another. See? Soldier, soul. And there's another one. Soldier, right? Sold your. Soldier. You sold your soul, soldier. They sound exactly the same because it's all a magic spell. It's saying to you what you're going to do without telling you what you're going to do. It's a way for them to try and clear their conscience. Well, we told them. We showed them. It was there, right there in plain sight. All they had to do was look at it and pay attention, but they don't want your attention focused on what they do. That's why it's called Washington, D.C. to begin with. They're deceiving the world. D.C., deceivers. You know, D.C., D.C., no see, can't see, made blind. See, the made blind. She's blind. She can't see. She's a Nazi. And I think they add some things so that people will deny certain truths that they present to them. like the word soldiers, they give you the truth. They say, look, you're going to be doing a bad thing. You're going to, killing the light of the world, which is love, and killing each other. Each other's supposed to be love for one another. We're supposed to love one another. So they're showing you in the language, but they're just not saying it to you straight out, because that's anything but what they are. They're not honest or straightforward or any of that kind of stuff. Although there's some magic spell even with what I just said. And if I try and cover every magic spell, I would never be able to do this video. Okay, and so then before we really get going here, there's one other magic spell I want to say, because it leads right into what we're talking about, and it's the word paper, right? Now, Phoenicians spell it phonetically because it's a net, right? So spell it phonetically, pay-per. So if you want to, watch pay-per-view movie, you got to pay for each one. If you want to have cans of vegetables or bags of vegetables or chips or macaroni or whatever it happens to be, you got to pay per each one that you get. So it's pay per money, right? Fiat currency, pay per money. Even if it was based on actual gold and silver, which it's same thing. It's money is money is money is money. It's just used as a trick, and paper money is used to steal a little more from you. So let's talk about how all this got started, what's happening, and how it's being used. So now we know that magic exists in the language, and magic is that's used most often is used against you in every word, almost, well, not every word, but in a plethora of words within the language that they teach you to speak, because they don't want you to be illiterate. They want you to absorb all of this subconscious manipulation that they can get you to take in. So you got to think about, now I'm going to use the word perfected. That doesn't mean it's good. It just means they man, either way you say this is kind of screwy, because they got really good at doing something that was really bad. That doesn't mean what they were doing is good. Anyways, so who was it that really perfected slavery? Where did that really all start? Now, people blame, recent generations in the beginning of the United States and stuff, but that slavery was nothing compared to the slavery that where they perfected it, and that was in ancient Egypt. The Romans adopted that and did just as evil of a job of slavery, but really where it was perfected and where they got it down to kind of a science. That's a figure of speech, but I don't really like using figures of speech, but sometimes to communicate the way that we've been taught the language, it's easier to do it. So that's why the rulers of the country paid homage to him on the dollar bill with the Egyptian pyramid on there. Who built the pyramids? The slaves. Now there's all these stories to try and misdirect people's attention. Oh, well, it was ancient alien technology, or they had some kind of mystical power, or they were more advanced civilization or something like that. History is such a convoluted mess that there is almost no way of knowing what is true and what's not. But the Egyptians said it themselves on their walls that they were really into slavery and that they got really good at it, and they taught it to one another. So in their the artwork, in their masonry artwork. So a pyramid is triangles set on a square base. Now, that was all masonry work and masonry art. And so the Masonic organizations, that's when they started to, I mean, it goes even a little further back than that, but that's when these organizations went from one empire to another, to another, to another, and started spreading around the world. And so the Romans, you'll see that, you know, the compass and square were obviously used a lot in their Roman architecture, you know, the triangle on the top there, the rectangular and square bases and stuff. It was very geometric in its design. So that carried into Washington, D.C. Now you'll see the same Roman buildings because that knowledge was carried from the Egyptians to the Romans and straight into the continuation of the Roman Empire in Washington, D.C. Now, obviously, we already know that the Masons were instrumental in the design and architecture of D.C. It's obvious that it's the Roman Empire. I already have another video about that too, if you want to get into depth of how we know that it's the Roman Empire. But so now we have Washington, D.C., and it's also founded on a square, just like the pyramids, 10 square miles. Now, if you go back in history, you'll see that even the slaves, they had somewhat of a standard of living. They had activities that they did outside of work and stuff like that, but they were coerced into slavery, the same way that you know, servants and bond servants in biblical days, which is Roman days. They also, the slaves in those days also had time for personal activities and things like that, but they were coerced or forced into labor through a system of slavery. It's slavery that they don't tell you about because they want to misdirect your attention to slaves picking cotton in the cotton fields and it just being one ethnicity of people. And certainly we're not neglecting or belittling or saying, you know, that slavery was just nothing. It was terrible as well. Slavery has continued to today, and it starts in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was founded, was given land from the Virgin Mary. It's a remocracy, not a democracy. They're mocking God. So they have everybody record their birth into the D.C. Devil's Church of the Roman Empire, the Roman Egyptian death cult. And so it's founded on 10 square miles to pay homage again to the Egyptians, and that's why it's on the dollar bill. Okay, so the base currency of the U.S. is that $1 bill. Yeah, and that's why that pyramid is there. The base currency, the square, the pyramid set on a square, right? And so that's why the Masonic symbol has that compass and square, right? Now, those folks, you'll see, people that work for the Roman Empire, for the government, they, if it's a particular type of office within the government or the military, they'll raise their hand to the square, right? So they raise their hand to the square. It's the square on the Masonic compass. It's the square of the bottom of the pyramid, which is slavery. They are making an oath to make everybody a slave. And so that's the abolishment, that oath to create authority is the abolishment of equality, the quality of love, the quality of a family, like the human family, you know. And so they abolish equality in favor of authority and subordinate. And then they say to everybody, well, you're all equal under the law, right? But it's that's why, you know, certain people will say, I am the law, you know, and that's a bad thing because, again, it's abolishment of equality. It's saying authority is the brain manipulation power of the false Roman Greco god Thor. Thor, right, with this mighty powerful hammer, you know, for authority, right, to rule over people. And so they raise their arm to the square. Again, it's that square at the base of the pyramid and what it represents, which is all the slaves, right? They're happy to serve all the slaves because you're serving them in a way that's much better for them than it is for you. So, now, where's another example of that? In the Mormon church, instead of calling it an oath, they have vows. They do these vows in the temple. And they also raise their arm to the square. Why? They have a place called Temple Square. Yes, Temple Square in Salt Lake City. Now, remember Lot's wife looking back and becoming a pillar of salt? You know, they got people dressed like pillars of salt and bakers because in 1 Samuel 8, what did it say? They'll take 10% of your money and turn you into bakers, right? And so when people are looking back, oh, I missed that community of people, I missed that stuff, they had to be careful because they turn into a pillar of salt. And what else is there at Temple Square to give us a hint of what's going on? A Roman building. Right in the same area. This is the church administrative building for the Mormon Church Corporation. The richest, wealthiest, money-hoarding corporation in all the world religiously. So, in the temple they do work for the dead. That's what they call it. They say work for the dead. It's a 10% requirement. Right? And what are they known for? The Mormon Tabernacle Choir. The Tabernacle Choir. Requirement. Somebody is singing all the way to the bank. Whether it's there in Salt Lake or there in Washington. Right? And so it's work for the dead. You know, that's where money comes from. It comes from the Bureau of Engraving. What is a grave? A grave is where dead people are. Those are graven images. They're images of dead people engraven because the dead people are in graves. They're engraving them, you know. So, engraving dead men. Eat them. So they're and printing. It's all this Roman Egyptian death cult. Remember? So that's why the money has dead presidents on it, dead people on it, dead men on it. They're not all presidents, but Ben Franklin wasn't a president, but the dead men. So, and how does printing start when they're printing money? It starts with a thing called a die, a printing die. You know, they die and then they print. So, again, Adam and Eve eating from that tree, that tree that has three branches, judicial, legislative, and executive, right? It's just they're acting out the Bible, right? That's what in the most evil ways. Now the Bible is not the holy grail of truth, but there's some true things in it, and it doesn't matter whether it was the truth or not. They're using it to form, institute, and carry out the work of the government. So the printing starts with a die, and this is why you've heard the expression biblically: the wages of sin is death. The Bureau of Engraving, work for the dead, arms to the square, slavery, the Roman Egyptian religion of mammon, and the secrets of slavery. So the wages of sin is death. And so that's why they use the term waging war. They're waging war against people. And so soldiers wear something called a helmet. Remember the guys that sold their soul? That they're killing the light of the world? They put on something called a helmet, right? Because to each other, they're giving each other the opportunity or the misfortune of meeting hell. So, which is what happens when people throw dead animals on a grill. They're meeting hell. They're sending the animals to hell after they die. So money. Money is made from paper. Remember we talked about that. But that paper is made from cotton. Why is that paper made from cotton? Because they made a damnation, Adam's nation, a damnation, people living in damnation, right? Living in damnation of cotton picking slavery. That's why they made the money out of paper that's made from cotton. Because it's a nation of cotton picking slaves. And they showed you with the pyramid. Okay, so how else do they show this? Well, Lincoln was supposedly the guy that frees the slaves, right? The Emancipation Proclamation and all that kind of stuff happened around and during the time of Lincoln. But Lincoln was a deceiver. He was enslaving everybody in the country through mental manipulation. This is why he is the different coin, right? He's the copperhead coin because he was a serpent. And so, you know, with that, remember the story about Legion went into the pigs, right? And so they call it a penny bank or a piggy bank. And so they're dropping all those pennies into the pig because Legion, the serpent, the devil, went into the pigs. And he's a serpent. Why did they use the word serpent? Because somebody picked up a pen and became a serpent on a tree. What is paper made from? Often paper is made from the pulp of a tree. And so when somebody picks up a pen and writes rules trying to control the lives of other people and abolish the family quality, the quality of love, equality, in favor of authority and subordinate to make themselves the god of Thor, practicing their authority over you, they become a serpent on a tree. There's a serpent on a tree. And just like Abraham, he was willing to sacrifice you. And so now let's think about that word you. You, and you. So you, Y-O-U, that'd be like you or you or you or you or you. Then there's you that are the sheep, which were often used for sacrifice. And then there's another you, and it's the one for money. Financial magic, a magic spell, you. It's a tree that has kind of like a bush kind of tree, and it's a member of the plant family called Taxus. Tax us. Taxes. Have you paid? Have you paid your taxes? See, they're men, wolves in sheep's clothing. They want you to think they're just like you when they're really willing to just sacrifice you. And what they really like to do is just use you. The secrets of slavery, financial magic. Okay, so that word you, um, you know, they sacrificed ewes as a Jewish tradition in biblical days. Now you'll notice there's a branch of the covenant called judicial. They gave you the magic spell, judicial, J-U, but what you say is judicial, and that's because the Jewish rabbis and priests of that day, and some of them today, not all of them, but there's a cabal of Jews, not just Mormons, but there's a cabal. That ball is like a ballpoint pen as well for serpents. But there's a group of the small group of those guys that they enslaved their own people, and now they've worked on not only enslaving their own people. They started with 613 laws, Jewish laws, religious laws for people who are practicing religious Jews. But now they're using it to enslave people around the world. The Romans adopted in the Jewish tradition, and some of those leaders who got really good a long time ago at manipulating language. They call this thing here a yad. This is the origination, or one of the originations, of a magic wand. You'll notice that Jewish script has changed a bunch over the years, and that's because they were using magic spells on their own people. And the Jewish priests and the Roman Caesars and the Phoenicians all worked together, and that's how the English language got created. And that's why the English language is filled with just probably thousands upon thousands of magic spells or spelling words that often, when you look at them, don't even make much sense. That's why kids are so they usually have a year or two of real difficulty with spelling and language, because they teach kids in the beginning that P makes a P and H makes a H, and then they put them together and say it makes a F, because what they're really saying is you, and teaching them magic spells. And so they look at the words, like phone or alphabet, and they go, it doesn't make any sense. And so I did it with my kids, unfortunately, get frustrated with them, like, no, sound it out. And they're trying to sound it out in what should be the way that those letters sound. And we're saying, why aren't you getting it? Phone is phone. You just say it, phone. But they're looking at a P and an H, and they're going, well, how do you get that's an F sound. Why? And so they're not getting it. And we get mad at them because they're reading it the right way. But anyways, so that's where the you came. And again, that's wolves in sheep clothing, just trying to use you and deceive you into slavery. They want to make you a part of the fold, right? They want you to be part of the fold. What fold? That blind fold. The lady of DC, the representation of Eve, a blind lady, because she can't see that she's reaching up with death in her hands. The scales of a serpent in one hand and the sword of death in another. She's a Nazi. She can't see. She has the mark of Cain, right? That's what blind folks need. Now, there's people that are naturally physically blind. That's a different blindness, right? But they use it. They mock anybody and everybody. And so they're just mocking the blind and saying everybody else is blind. They got the mark of Cain. They can't see what's going on. They've been deceived, you know. And so, and again, in their mockery and system of slavery, they created male and female. Male and female. You've got male, which might be just a letter from a friend or a note or something like that. And then you got female, which is a Bill, which is why Bill is a guy's name. And so you have a government trans agenda because it's trans male for transactions, business, financial transactions of slavery. Male and female. So, they say about our human family, they say some of them are what they call them illegal aliens. But they're the ones with the little green men. They're the ones with the little green men that took over the earth, right? Whether it's the green men of money or the GI, government issue, military issue, little green men and helmets. And then they create toys and they tell you to teach your kids to use their imagination with heaven, in heaven. Use your imagination to imagine war and death and violence and killing. Use your imagination. Here's some army men. Use your imagination. Imagination is a magic spell because they don't want you to use your imagine heaven. They don't want you to imagine heaven. They want you to imagination so that you'll be a patriot. Why a patriot? Financial magic. Patriot. Are you someone who ought to pay the tree? Are you a patriot? So this all again comes out of the capital, right? Why is it called the capital? That's a magic spell too. They just, the A and the O, the alpha and the omega, they just, again, a remocracy, not a democracy. They're mocking God. So the alpha and the omega, A and O, capital and capital, same thing. It's just a magic spell. And the capital of DC is, again, where that square is, raising their arms to the square to make everybody a slave. And capital is another word for money. Capital money. Capitol Hill. They're the folks that issue the money. They're the ones that make the money, right? At the Bureau of Engraving, remember? It's a death cult. And so capital is money. It's also the city of government or the seat of government, and that's why they put your name in all capital letters. That's why corporate names will be in all capital letters. Capital is also a form of punishment, capital punishment. It's about death. Remember the Roman Egyptian death cult. This is all about money. The Bureau of Engraving is about dead people. And capital is, using your name in all capital letters is saying that they're capitalizing on you. They're capitalizing on you. So it's called capitis dimitio maxima. It's the reduction of people into the lowest status of peasant or slave. Okay? And you'll notice that the only time your name is spelled in all capital letters is if it's something from the government or it has something to do with money. So your paycheck, your credit cards, your bills that come in the mail, all of the stuff will be in all capital letters. And by the way, credit cards aren't credit cards. You don't have available line of credit. You don't have, and by the way, that's why they call it a line, because they're luring you in and deceiving you, even just in simple ways by saying, here's a line of credit for you. But it's not a line of credit, it is a line of debt. You have this much debt available to you. How much do you want to get into? So, and then you have things like another financial document, a mortgage. Well, again, it's all about death, remember? Well, what's the word mortgage? Mortgage is a Latin word. Mort is Latin for death, and gage is Latin for pledge. It's a death pledge. That's why mortgages are, 20 and 30 years long. You're making a death pledge. Basically, you're going to pay forever until you die. You're going to be paying. It's saying you're going to pay for kind of a lifetime. Now, life was a little shorter back when they started all this kind of stuff. Now people are living a little bit longer, but they found other ways to get people into additional debt, with debt cards and such. Another thing that comes from the government has your name in all capital letters, reducing you to that of a slave, is your government employee ID, your driver's license. It's a lie and a sin. It's saying that if you want to do something that you naturally have the right to do, to go to get something to eat, or go visit friends, or go to see a doctor, or travel and see new areas of the world or country or whatever, that you have to ask their permission to go. And so it's a license. It's a magic spell, license. Do you have the government's license? Are you taking upon yourself the government's license? Why? Because Jesus, the word Jesus, the reason they translated it to Jesus in the English language is because it's us, you, we, everybody. They've turned into the Savior, or to Christ. Why Christ? Because crying and to sacrifice you. They want to sacrifice you, the Lamb of God. They want to sacrifice you. And so they have you take upon yourself their sins, their license. It's an employee ID. And if, you've heard about, in Masonry and magic, who's that guy, Aleister Crowley. He says, learn to read backwards in their evil ways. Well, employee ID backwards, EID backwards is DIE, die. Remember, we're talking about the Roman Egyptian death cult. Die, die, die. And so, in the movie 4th of July, and the alien and the thing, and they said, what do you want? And the alien just said, die, die, die. Well, that's what they want. They want you to die. A printing die, an engraving die, a capital die. They just want to sacrifice you. That's what they want. And so they issue this, you also see, your birth certificate. That's where they start capitalizing your name in all capital letters, right? Which is improper, supposedly, to spell somebody's name in the English language, but they use it because it's part of what they're, it's part of the money magic, right? And so they're showing you, look, these letters are all capital, and you know that capital is a form of death, is another word for death, capital punishment, right? You are being punished for accepting the tree of death, the tree with 3 branches. It's punishment, capital punishment, money punishment. It's punishment, saying you're going to have to pay for the experience of living. You're going to have to pay to stay alive. You're going to have to pay not to suffer hunger. You're going to have to pay not to suffer homelessness, right? So these documents will all look very much the same. Your birth certificate, a car title, a stock certificate, and cash. You'll see all that web stuff on there, right? The real intricate designs. Why? Because that is monetized paper. All those papers with all those symbols, with all that Masonic art in it, is monetization. It's monetized paper. They are monetizing the name of the child and attempting to get people to believe that it's actually them. And they'll tell you right on the birth certificate, either it's printed exactly on the birth certificate or on a piece of paper that comes with it or on the envelope. I've seen it on the envelope as well. When you get the birth certificate, it says, do not use this for the purposes of identification. And then what do people do? They run to the DMV office with their birth certificate to use it for the purposes of identification. Look, this proves I'm me. Now can I get a license from you? Can I take upon myself your lies and sins? And they told you don't do it. And so to them, they've washed themselves of any guilt. But there's no and I don't like using the law as an example because the law is most often an evil thing. That's why law of, like the law of Moses or the law of government or the law of this, the different things, is an anagram for a wolf, because that's the wolves in sheep clothing, right? And so I don't like necessarily saying that, but the whole thing is to manipulate you and to wash their hands of it and say, look, we showed them, we told them, we disclosed it to them, and they did it anyways. So the fault is theirs. And there's in law, there's a thing called no meeting of the minds, and it makes any agreement immediately void. In other words, if you enter agreement but you didn't understand what they were, trying to get you to sign, if you didn't understand that, that means there's no meeting of the minds. That means the document is void, the agreement is void, and it's all not valid. Well, they don't tell people, they don't teach people this kind of stuff because they want to keep you enslaved. It's profitable for them. Another magic spell, prophets. That's a false F sound. That PH is a false F. So those are false prophets. That's why, they'll falsify documents to falsify prophets for their false prophets. And they'll tell you, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and all that kind of stuff. They're just making profits. That's all. It's all about money. That's what religion was to begin with. It's to lead people away from God and into slavery. Whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, or a plethora of other religions. Now, some of them aren't quite so bad as others, but the Abraham religions are among the worst of leading people away from God and into slavery. So that's why you'll hear some really awful things, and you were given a sense of right and wrong so that you would be able to discern things that are of God and not. but people will read things that are blatantly and obvious evil in the Bible, attributed to God or Jesus or somebody, and say, oh well, you can't judge the morality of God. He's the ultimate uh, arbiter of morality, and you, no doubt, that's why you have a sense of right and wrong, so that you would know somebody is deceiving you. See, the book, what's a Bible covered with? The hide of an animal, right? The hide skin of an animal. When it was first scribed, serpents wrote on what kind of the parchment, right? And parchment is made from what? The skin of a dead animal. Okay? And the skin of a dead animal is called the hide. Why? Because the devil hides in the pages of the Bible. It's a serpent on a tree. It's the beast, the Bible. It's a magic spell. Bible, the golden bull. It's the holy cow. It's the beast. And you'll see the serpent tongue that hangs out of the pages on some of them. The little red serpent tongue hangs out. The Romans took over Christianity in the Council of Nicaea. That's why Christian buildings, supposedly Christian buildings, are often Roman architecture. The Romans were the ones that killed the Savior in the biblical narrative. What are you doing building a Roman building? Except for the fact that it was taken over a long time ago. The Romans did it with every religion they came across. They incorporated it into their system of rule so that they could get people to, come fight for us. We're fighting for God, the God that you know. Look, we have him right here, And so it's like corporate spying. When a corporation has a new competition, they will sometimes send people into the new corporation to get hired, go in from the corporation, and either take over it from within or destroy it from within. Well, that's exactly what they did with every religion that they ever got their hands on. And when they found Christianity, they knew they had to get their hands on that one. They had to take over Christianity. If they didn't, Christianity was going to take over the world, because Christianity was very different than the biblical narrative is. This book is so manipulated that it's disgusting. The original true Christianity was about everybody freeing everybody, about the kingdom of heaven not coming, out of the sky or something like that, about everybody making heaven. And it wouldn't be kingdom, it would be a good king. Our king is king. He's a good king. He doesn't say that we work for him. He doesn't refer to us as subjects. And if you want to know if you're, again, subjects of the king, well, what do police call people? They call them subjects. And you're taught subjects in school. You think that, they're referring to the topic that we're talking about. But no, when they're saying subjects, they're teaching you subjects, your subjects. They're teaching you how to be a part of their system of slavery. So it starts with the birth certificate. Now, in England, the birth certificate name and all that kind of stuff ultimately is transcribed and sent to the Vatican, right? Because the Vatican is a soul corporation. It's in the business of collecting souls. In the United States, it's the Mormon Church. That's why they're so known for genealogy. And every president they take and they give them their genealogy all the way back. That's because they are given every single name, because what this document is capturing your soul. Okay, so a lot of times they will start when a baby is born, instead of the first place the baby's foot, on the mom, or on, a foot on the ground, or, something like that, the first place they put it on is on ink, on an ink pad. Why ink? Because they're incorporating the name, and that's when they write it in all capital letters. You notice that birth certificate, you get a certificate of birth, you might see the name in upper lowercase letters. But as soon as that birth certificate comes in the mail, it's all capital letters, right? And that's how they refer to you from then on. There's videos you should watch about the birth certificate fraud on YouTube. You should watch them. There's mostly truth in those videos, but there's some deception and there's some controlled narrative in it too. But it'll give you enough that you'll know. But anyways, it's obvious anyways. You don't need all that. That's just additional information, or additional knowledge. Information is a magic spell as well. Inform, right? They inform people. I want to inform you of this. And information, yes, sir. We're information, sir. Everybody's information, and so everybody's information. What information do you get from them is a different thing. So now, so why? So they start with ink because they're incorporating the name. Ink is also used is part of the magic. Ink it was originally made from iron sulfate. It's called iron gall ink because iron. First of all, gall is gal, that gallet, the tree, right? And iron sulfate is a magic spell of earning the fate of a soul. I earn soul fate. Now, earn could be, I don't know, earn like earning something, like you go to work to earn money, or it could be earn like filled with ashes, right? For people that want to burn after they die. So I don't know why nobody has presented this information previous to this, but I mean, some of it they have, but people have to stop and think about, and I mean, think about some of the things that people say and do. They tell you, I mean, Elon Musk tells you that what he has a big AI company, right? And he tells you that AI is evil, that it's a bad thing for the world, and that there's a 90% chance that it'll be a really, really bad thing for the world. And they tell you what they're doing and do it. So, and then people just go right along with it, They don't mind, like closed door sessions or, the Mormon church hiding stuff. Members of their church, they don't mind being in the dark about it. People being part of that blind fold, part of the flock, part of the blindfold, So they put the foot on ink because it's part of their magic. The iron sulfate, they're trying to capture the soul of the child. They're trying to capture the soul. And so then they send that information to either the Roman Catholic Church or the Roman Mormon Church, and they don't say Roman Mormon, but it's obvious. It's in the construction and appearance of the place. You should be able to see it. Those fires in front of the Mormon Church Administration building, those are crucifiers, because that's what the Romans were. They were crucifiers, and they're sacrificing everybody to their system of slavery. And in war, they didn't stop with Jesus on the cross. They've got fields of sacrifice. You know that part in the movie The Matrix where Morpheus, and he was a deceiver, Morpheus, he's offering two pills, Republican and Democrat, red pill and blue pill. Which pill do you want? They don't care. But he said, only one is the truth. I'm only offering you the truth. He wasn't offering him the truth. Morpheus was a deceiver. Morphe us. Fee us the people. We the people. Morphe us. We love Morpheus. Oh, the beacon of truth. He's going to set Neo free. What he wasn't. He was just recapturing his soul and having him fight a spiritual war. He was part of the blindfold too. So, they're all seeking Zion. So, the birth certificate. Now, the feet, it's the feet, the soul, right? The fetus. It's a fetus. They're the fetus, and they're capturing the soul of the fetus. They put it in all capital letters name, all capital letter name, to represent death. Now, talked about the birth certificate, either on the certificate or on the envelope or with a piece of paper with it, will tell you do not use it for the purposes of identification. It's saying you shouldn't even have this thing. You don't need it for nothing. Right? And if you use it, you're going to be part of, living in damnation. You're going to live in damnation and be a subject, because a citizen is someone, their definition of it, someone who owes allegiance. Well, what's another way to say you owe allegiance? It means you owe obedience. You're giving yourself to them. And that's why they ask the mothers to sign it and fill it out, because they're getting their subterfuge is to get the moms to turn over their child to the devil. It's the DC, it's the devil's church. So, think about it. Who wants you to pay a price, and who wants you to be free? Somebody wants you to be free, and somebody wants you to pay a price. Somebody thinks life should be a gift, and somebody thinks life should be a financial product. So, the devil wants it to be a financial product. The devil wants you to be in slavery. God is love, and He loves you. So look at the word capital and hospital. Now, you'll hear this expression with, Aleister Crowley and the devil-y folks and evil folks and secret societies and stuff. Order out of chaos. So, you take the last few letters of capital and hospital, take those off, and you have the letters that aren't the same are CH, HO, and S. And that's an anagram of chaos. Order out of chaos. They are manipulating all of society in just the worst ways. Dollars and cents, debt and credit. You notice something about those words? DC. DC. They told everybody, oh, DC stands for District of Columbia. Look, wonder what Columbia is. Ask what's Columbia, and why is it called, why did they use Columbia? So it keeps your attention focused on that. Instead of district, strict, it's a trick. District, And so they want you to be focused on, well, District of Columbia. They say it's District of Columbia. What's Columbia and all this kind of stuff. Instead of all the deceiving stuff that they do. So, you have Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill is a representation of Calvary Hill. Why? Because capital has to do with death, right? And so this is a Death Hill. And what is Death Hill? Well, that was Calvary Hill, or also known as Golgotha, the hill of the skull. Well, and what's the name of the secret societies that put people into really powerful position? Skull and Bones. It's the Roman cult, and everybody's just serving the Roman cult. Well, in the biblical narrative, they killed the good guys and they were the bad guys, but let's serve them and build their buildings and be their slaves. Let's do that. A handful of people controlling a whole nation into a deception of the devil's church, doing things that are blatantly obvious, making each other pay a cost of living, everybody being accosted, making each other pay a cost of living instead of being a family, the human family, and living the gift of living. So, Adam and Eve, the Mormons and the temple work for the dead. The ceremonies in the temple are called endowment. Now, this is not going to be a video about Mormonism, but this word is very specific to money. Endowment. Endowment is a form of money payment. Like you might give an endowment to a certain group or something. Endowment is a payment of money. So that ceremony is called an endowment ceremony. And when they go to a temple, now they go to the church on Sundays, but they go to the temples on other days. When they go to the temple, they're known as temple patrons because they're paying. It's the one area of the Mormon church where you can't go for free. You have to pay 10% of all your income. Remember in 1 Samuel 8, they were warned, hey, if you choose rulers over you, and in the Mormon church they call them authorities. Why? Because it's the false god Thor. If you choose rulers over you, they'll take 10% and turn you into bakers. So it all goes back to Adam and Eve, right? And the serpent on a tree. Well, what's a serpent have in him? Venom. Now let's take a look at the word money. Take the tail off the Y, and then you know how they say, look at Aleister Crowley and those guys. They say learn to read backwards. Well, read backwards. The reverse of money is venom, and that's why there's a payment platform called Venmo, because it's an anagram of venom and an anagram of money. That's why, and so you see, if you put, it's a mirror image, money and venom. And so if you go into Mormon temples in their marriage rooms, you'll see mirrors on either side because it's a mirror image. It's a hint without telling you. It's saying you should look at things both ways because both sides of the coin are evil. So, patron. And then we have a payment system called Patreon. Now that goes right back to the serpent on a tree. It's a magic spell. Ask a kid. Go to a kid and say, I'm going to say something to you and you write down or tell me what it is. Now, don't say write it down. Just say, you say or point to the things that I said. I'm going to say Patreon. Now, what did I just say? Can you show me a picture or a thing and they'll say, Patreon, Patreon. There's a tree and you said pay and something on a tree. So put some money on a tree or something. Well, who was on the tree? The serpent on the tree. And what does the serpent have? Venom. Patreon, Venmo, venom, money, Adam and Eve, and serpents on a tree. So it's all about death. The whole thing is all death. It's all death and slavery. Why? Because Adam and Eve, if you eat from that tree, in that day ye shall surely what? Die. You surely die. So, and then, so all you have to do is really start to pay attention and use a little discernment. I don't know how, so I should not say that. This is not a video about that. Patriarchy. There's, that's been a big politicized word here during the past few years. Patriarchy, the patriarchy. That's a magic spell. Patri, our key to the riches. If we set up this system of slavery, it'll be our key to the riches, the patriarchy. They have something called a patriarch. And churches will have a patriarch of the church. Patri our church. Patri our church. Patriarch. And so why do both churches and government seem to be in collusion with this? Because it's church and state. So people say the separation of church and state. They don't care whether they're separate or not. They're this. It's not the separation of two different types of things. People think that the church is religion and the state is government. Church and state are two religions. One of them operates publicly as a religion. The other one operates publicly as a government. But they're both religions. The religion of church and the religion of state. See her church, serpent tree 8. Her church is from the serpent's tree, the devil's church. The deceivers of Washington, D.C. Why is it called Washington? Washington? They're not clean. It's a dirty business politics. Isn't that what they say? So, but you've heard the term brainwashing? So, Brainwashington, D.C. Except that's also a magic spell. Remember, they're not clean, guys. There's a filthy business politics is. So, what they're doing is filthying up the brain. Why? So filthy is the opposite, kind of the opposite of washing something clean. So filthying the minds of people. So that's Brainwashington, D.C. And there is some truth in the Bible. And one of the things it says is your good works are as filthy rags. It's not talking, but in Christianity, they will use that to manipulate and tell people that they're filthy and dirty from day one. That they're born sinners and that anything they do, God thinks it's just nothing. It's filthy rags, which is evil to teach people that. When you do good things that are kind and love, that's not a filthy rag. It's no filthy rag to me. It's a good thing. I love it when people do kind, loving things for the purpose of being themselves love, right? But what that actually was about, filthy rags, Roman architecture governments, their works are as filthy rags. See, DC, they've got the blind leading the blind. They're deceiving everybody. So, turning everybody into cotton-picking slaves. And they love that. They really love that. They want people being money hungry. They want people being greedy. In a financial system, it inspires greed like nothing else. No, let me rephrase that. A financial system inspires greed in comparison to nothing else. Nothing inspires greed like a financial system. And they love it because the harder you work, the more you work, the more money you make. Every time you do something to expend your energy and earn money, or to use other people to earn money, they get a piece of the action. They love it, you thinking you're going to get ahead of them. They love you thinking you're going to make it to the top. They love your ambition, your hard work, and your dedication. Not dead, not the magic spell D-E-D, dedication, dedication. They love your dedication to the dollar, to making a financial success of yourself, to becoming financially independent. They love your dedication. They love your dedication because they get a piece of every bit of it. And they control how much of it you keep. And if the nation's people start to get too profitable and start to become too enriched, they will cause either a financial collapse, a market collapse. They'll change the interest rates. They'll cause your adjustable rate mortgage to skyrocket, to go from one amount to 3 times the amount in 1 month's time. They will make sure that you don't ever get too much because they want it all. Um, and it's the they they use that phrase. It's a free market society, but it's not a free market society. There's nothing. Wait, go to the market and see what you can get free. It's not a free market. It's a price market because they want to put a price on everything. And so and price ends, with those three words, three letters, ICE. You got to be able to see that it's cold. A price is a cold way to live. It's not the gift of living. That's a cost of living. And that's a cold thing to do. That's why I've been having to walk around and walk basically on the colder of the road because I've been getting the cold shoulder from some people in my family who could help me free the world, but they choose not to. And so it's the market, the price mark. It's the mark of the beast. Like the bookmark of the beast, it's the price mark of the beast. So when they say streets paved with gold, well, paved, that's a magic word, paved. They say heaven is a place for, when you're dead and in a spirit, not in a physical body. Heaven is supposed to be a gift for the living. It's what we're supposed to make for each other and with each other, right? Their version of heaven is it, you just have to make it until you're dead, and then everything gets good. You just have to serve this system, and we promise you something that you can't verify, but we'll promise you that it gets good right after you die. Just be a good slave all your life, do as you're told, and pay and obey, and then you'll live in a spirit life after this world. Well, and streets paved with gold and stuff like that. What does a spirit need a road for, or a road paved with gold for? Nothing. In fact, if if it was as their version says, God is spirit, what is any physical object or thing? It's this is one thing the Mormons have, right? But they don't even have faith in it themselves, that God is a man with a regular body just like everybody else, that he's not an absentee father. He doesn't live in some distant world or in the clouds somewhere. Well, we do live in the clouds, but not in the way that they say. God does live in the clouds. He lives right here on earth with you, with everybody, with his human family, with his earthly, heavenly human family. But they don't want you to think of that. They want to give you false images so that you don't know what to look for. And they want you to think that God is something that you can't see or hear. That way they can say to you that they speak for God. I speak for myself. Thank you very much. Spirits have no need of streets. But you and I do. And we don't need them paved with gold. What we need is, we need people not to be deceived. So, they got the Bible, which is the beast, the golden bull, the bull market, and the holy cow. It's all about slavery. Think about slave words. The stocks were a place where they would put people, and in bonds and bondage. And so we have stocks and bonds because it represents the stocks, the stockade, and bondage. And so they have a lot of interest in you participating in that interest, right? If they're interested in you, like getting a loan for a car. They want you to be a loan. Well, you've got the financial responsibility now. You're in it alone. You got to make sure you get it paid, or we're going to take it from you. So you're in it alone. So here's a loan, and we have lots of interest in you paying the loan because we have lots of interest in you paying that loan. We want you to borrow money for your home and car and business and everything else, because then you got to go make money. And then when you go make money, we're going to make money on taxing your income. We're going to make money on interest fees for your loan payments, on money that you've already paid the tax on. And an interest fee is just another tax. It's a percentage tax. When you see that percentage, it's a tax. Whether it's your adjustable rate, your percentage rate, your tithing rate, or your tax rate, it's all a tax. And why? Because it's a tax on you. They're attacking you. It's a tax. A tax. They're taxing you. So, they'll make interest on your income. They'll make tax on your income. They'll make interest on your payments. All while the value of the dollar goes down. And while the cost of things go up. And where is that missing billions of dollars of going, container truckfuls of cash that just go missing, a government shipment of cash that just goes missing? Well, where does it go? Into their pockets. And why do they do that? To enrich themselves, and then to further enrich themselves, that money that they flooded the economy with and then snuck it into their very deep pockets causes the cost of the value of the dollar to go down, which means you have less. So you work for it for this amount, and then a little while later it's worth less, even though you worked for it for that amount. The whole thing is a trick. It's an illusion, and that is the system of slavery and the Roman Egyptian religion of mammon and their financial magic. So, and then they keep you motivated into it too. That's why their bills come monthly, in case you feel like, oh man, I got to pay bill again. Get back to work. I'll put in some extra time, some overtime, whatever. And so it's always to keep you motivated by fear. Oh, I got to make sure I don't get behind on my bills. Got to make sure I don't fall behind. Da 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 da. They're doing everything they can to push you down, while you think they're trying to help you out, but they're not. It's all, like I said, just a system of slavery. Anyways, I love you. That's what's happening. Yeah. Well, I think we got that. I think we did a pretty good job getting that information out. This is what I like to do at the end of a video. I like to talk to you as our human family, because that's what we are. It's not the human race, it's the human family. And they've tried to get everybody to live as the human race. Competition each other, business competition, stay ahead of the competition, stay ahead of the bills, stay ahead of everybody, trying to get ahead of the Joneses and all this kind of stuff. All these different things creates the human race instead of the human family. And in the human race, there's winners and losers. But in the human family, everybody wins. So all these, financial systems, religious systems, political systems, judicial systems, legal systems, all this stuff, they're all systems of slavery. We don't need any of it. We can live as the human family. And then we can live the gift of living instead of the cost of living. The human family instead of the human race. And that makes it easy, and that makes it fun. Then it's a lot of work, but a bunch of fun to make heaven. And we can do that together as the human family. They say that's a planet. But I say it's a magic spell. They're trying to get everybody in the net. Right? They're trying to be fishers of men and turn you into slavery. Right? What if fish are covered in scales? They don't want you, why? Because everything is being weighed, right? They want to weigh all the food and make you pay based on how much they gave you, the scales of justice. They want weigh prices and they want, everything is really cold with them, whether it's just ice, whole ice, sacrifice, or pay the price. It's all It's all a system of slavery and bondage, and we don't have to do that. We can live the gift of living, and it'll be a bunch of fun to make heaven. Much more fun than trying to make the bills, you know? trying to make the payment and all that kind of stuff. We can just make heaven, and our kids can be born into heaven. They can be born here, right? And born into heaven, and they can feel lucky all their life. You know, people will say, well, if you don't know bad, then you don't know good. You have to have evil with goodness. If you don't have evil, you won't know what good is. You know, if you don't have sadness, you won't know joy. That's not true. You know, have you ever had the perfect day all day long? Did you need something during the day to remind you something bad to happen so that oh, this is fun. Oh yeah, I was almost about to forget I was having fun. No, we can live a life of joy and happiness and love as the human family, and give each other a gift for the living, heaven. That's the gift, right? The gift of love. It makes things feel like heaven. All right, I love you, y'all. Have a fun day.